to have been joined this morning by Jagan Ramaswami, who is who leads the shared services and digital transformation processes for future pipe industries. Jagan has an 18-year career spanning not only obviously corporate, but consulting, research and advisory. And he chose to take on the challenge of transforming an old manufacturing company as just to keep himself busy, I suspect. He has advised many governments, large corporates and growing enterprises across geographies on strategy and implementation. And as an engineer, he is drawn to data and strongly believes in a data-driven organization. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me hand you over to Jagan. Welcome, Jagan.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. Those were a lot of very kind words. Let me trust people are able to share the screen, see the screen that I'm sharing. So without much ado, let me get into the presentation. So this is something that I kind of live by, Thomas Preston Werner's words. So in most organizations, there's two kinds of people. One, the people that do the tasks, the mundane, daily, repetitive tasks, and those that contribute a different kind of value in transforming the organization itself. So it is at this point when things are not really doing very well for the world, the virus, the whatever it's happening. So I think these words ring true more than ever. It is very critical that people recognize the fact that automation is here to stay, and automation will be a part of your corporate life. But I think everybody in the organization needs to play a role in ensuring it works, and everybody needs to be around even after automation has found its place in the enterprise. And let me tell you why. As you go on, you'll see that automation, far from being detrimental to employment, actually helps add a lot of people. So when you look at automation itself, the early days of automation, I like to start from the very early days when we started using tools for a lot of business processes like MS Excel, PowerPoint, or Microsoft Word. Those were the early days of automation when pen and paper was replaced by computers. You started having Excel, then you did macros on Excel, you had formulas, you had sheets, you had interplay, you had interconnected sheets and all that. So when we reached a point where people started talking automation and that fact that a lot of business activities could be done through systems, people actually thought automation could be the silver bullet for all enterprise problems. But the reality has been far from it, and let's see why. So the origins of automation itself go back to Jeff Bezos and what's called the Amazon effect. So one of the things that Amazon kind of did extremely well was its focus on customer experience. And over time, and it's kind of been proven by a lot of research, that people started expecting everything to be delivered quickly and accurately. So this is not just in terms of logistics or the cosmetics that you order, but even in your daily life, be it food that you order, be it stuff that you do at home, anything. If you have a query that you are running on a computer. So there's kind of this experience thing which has become a core, integral part of our user experience, and that has been the biggest driver for automation, because people started expecting accuracy, speed, repeatability, and reliability. And what better to give all of these than systems and machines? And that's when the RPA world came in. And when RPA started a few years back, a lot of companies kind of ran in to embrace the system, and it's kind of the way it was showcased was it's going to replace people. It's going to have an impact that's beyond what's been seen ever before. In fact, you'll be surprised. I actually had one of my clients, an elderly investor from Malaysia, and I was presenting to him the benefits of robotic process automation and how bots could take over his processes and get things done at lightning speed and greater accuracy. At the end of the whole thing, this gent had a very thoughtful look on his face, and he asked me, where are we going to house these robots? So he actually picturized a real, actual physical robot sitting there. So it's kind of a very weird problem that I've faced, but it's very real. And when you've been in the manufacturing industry, when you're coming from an old world industry, it's not something that's surprising for a lot of people. It takes time to grow on them, but the services industry has kind of taken to it like crazy. If you remember, some of you might have been around when the early buzz with ERP started. SAP went crazy. Everybody started embracing SAP. Huge budgets were spent, and companies kind of went head over heels in changing their systems, processes to accommodate ERP systems. And that was kind of the initial days of automation enterprise-wide. And then came BPM, and all of these were kind of low to medium impact, but it took a very long time to get done because rolling out an ERP system has its own challenges. Today, when we are looking at RPA and when we are looking at automation in whatever form, the key selling point that a lot of people bring to the table is the fact that RPA can be implemented real quick, and it delivers on its promised ROI real quick. That has kind of been the reason that the early adopters went in headlong, and in some cases, I've actually had interactions with very large enterprises, and these are multi-billion enterprises, tech enterprises. A telco, a large European telco, actually had a lot of failures when it came to RPA because simply the tool did not deliver the promised ROI. There are reasons. So where have we reached today? We have some basic level of automation that we have come to. There's a lot of rules-based systems that are being developed. Low-value activities have been automated in a lot of enterprises. We are slowly getting towards more interactive and less human intervention requirements in many of these cases. Over time, these systems will learn, and that's when AI kicks in, but that's still far away. And current level of maturity is still, it works with structured data. The systems don't work with unstructured data. That's the actual reality. So there's a lot of hype around it. But RPA has its own drawbacks. Though RPA does deliver on the promised quality, RPA does deliver on speed, but there are a lot of constraints within which RPA operates. For example, the data that goes into RPA, your BPM systems, have to be very well defined. The rules have to be very well defined. It cannot be flexible. Purchase order processing, for example, it's a standard system that's common in practically every enterprise globally, and it's a well-established, standardized process. So if you see most business cases that RPA has been successful, it will be purchase order processing because it's kind of a one size fits all kind of a solution. But that's not the case in most cases. Performance and scalability, yes, it delivers because in most cases the systems can meet up to the needs. Where the challenges come up is on end-to-end management of processes. The process by itself cannot be entirely rules-based. There are changes that happen. There are dynamics that are beyond the control of any system that we create. Any workflow is subject to change as it evolves in the organizational setup. And these are not activities that a RPA can take on. And at that point, the RPA kind of stops and hands over to a human, asking them to intervene and get things done. So in many companies, from my personal experience, people who have sold RPA solutions, the key premise that they have, the key sales pitch has been, okay, you have 50 people running this process today. You implement 4 bots, and I will ensure that you can bring down the number of people to 20, and the 4 bots can replace 30 people, and we are all happy. You spend less on people, less on space, things get done at a good speed, at a great level of accuracy, with extreme levels of reliability. But the reality actually is far from that. RPA was initially pitched as something that replaces people. In reality, RPA frees up your resources for other activities. You just cannot replace people. You have to have them in the system, because today's RPA tools are not entirely independent, and they cannot be, because the data still has to be very structured for them to work on. And that's where intelligent automation kind of came in. So what is this new animal that's kind of come up? This is kind of, I like to call it RPA on steroids, because if you think automation as a kind of a holistic ecosystem that starts from Microsoft, from Excel macros right up to AI-driven chatbots, the entire schema that comes within this constitutes intelligent automation based on where it is applied. To make myself clearer, if you have a call center and if you have people calling in for mundane stuff such as password resets in a bank, you do not need a caller at the other end to answer the phone. You can have a chatbot, or you can have a simple IVR system that kind of press 1 to reset your password, and you're done. You get an email saying your password is reset. You want to go ahead, go ahead. So things can be as simple as that, and that does not require an RPA solution. But when you integrate these kind of low-tech solutions along with in a very structured workflow that spans end to end, for example, in the same call center, if you have a workflow that starts with a password reset and then moves on towards other activities that the same person needs done, then they will be going into multiple kinds of data inputs. From pure IVR inputs, you might go into data capture from data pulls from ERP, CRM systems. You might even have data capture from an OCR device. You might have voice input at some point, just somebody talking, where you need an NLP engine to analyze what's said and interpret. So when you integrate all these kinds of tools into one workflow, you have intelligent automation. Now, this is something very different, because RPA standalone can do a task, cannot run an entire process. Intelligent automation runs an entire process end to end. And it's kind of like, I like to call it the bigger organism, with RPA being its constituent organ. You have to have these workflows very well defined so that you move from basic automation, simple rules, to enterprise level task-driven automation by RPA. And you also give room for unstructured data inputs like images, OCR, moving on to chats, people just input data through a chat interface and get feedback from a chatbot. Or over time, it can move into IoT integration, NLP, the works, the whole 9 yards. So this is kind of the entire spectrum of intelligent automation that's opening up now. And this needs a far bigger level of understanding of path definition before stepping into this. You just cannot get into intelligent automation with a plan for 1 year or 6 months or even 3 years, because intelligent automation transforms the entire organization, the entire enterprise, the entire business systems. So how do you get into intelligent automation? This is something, this slide is something I keep harping on quite a lot, even within my company. So to give a quick context, I work for a manufacturing company. Future Pipe Industries is one of the world's leading manufacturers of large diameter fiberglass pipes, expensive pipes, very large pipes. When I say large, these are like 6 feet, 12 feet diameter pipes. These are pipes used to carry water from the desalination plants to municipal transmission systems, or they work in oil rigs, moving oil from one place to other, in chemical plants where processes are corrosive and you need corrosion resistant thing. So it's a proper manufacturing setup. It's an old world company, 40-45 years, been there, done that kind of a company. People that I work with, most of them have spent more than 25-30 years in the company. They know the processes extremely well, so well to the point that they cannot even accept change. So how do you transform a company like this? It's like a slow moving dinosaur. It's not easy, but the will is there to bring in that change and bring in transformation. What is critical to start with, and this applies to every enterprise, be it a tech company, be it a very large, well-established manufacturing company, FMCG, or anyone, having workflows well-defined, well-optimized, and well integrated is critical. And to me, the most useful tool has been process mining. I use a lot of process mining in the way I work. So process mining is kind of a new subject that's come up in the last 4 or 5 years. It's a new entrant into the BPM space. Companies like Solaris, I have PathNow, we have Minet, Signavio. There's like these companies, these tools do far more than just helping you analyze these processes. You get to see the different ways in which your organization operates. For example, the same well-structured purchase to pay, when we did a process mining inside my company, I found 432 variants of the same process. And this process is by far the most standardized process globally in any organization. Purchase order processing is it's a standard set. But we found nothing less than 432 variants of the same process within our company. If that does not slow an enterprise down, I don't know what will. I think those inputs are critical when you get into intelligent automation. You have to have your workflows very well defined, very well structured, and very, very well optimized. You should never be, if you're in the game for intelligent automation, I highly recommend process mining as a starting point. Then you have to come to a unified automation engine or an orchestration system. Every different type of tool that you use needs to talk to one another, needs to have a workflow in which they all participate. None of them should be standalone. Data from each should flow into the other. If you have an IVRS system, the IVRS data bank, the data backend should talk with the RPA data backend, which should have a conversation with the chatbot, whether it's internal or external. This is critical. That's where the neural network that I keep talking about is built. And finally, you have bot management, which is critical. There are tools that help you visualize which of your bots is doing what at any given time. Just like you have dashboards for processes, you have dashboards for bot management, bot operations, and all that. It's worth investing in that if you're going into a highly evolved intelligent automation system. You need to know what comes in, what goes out, what's happening where, what's happening when, where is it getting delayed, what's not working well, what's working well. That feedback is critical, and that data needs to be collected, analyzed, and reported. I think these three constitute the most important elements in implementing intelligent automation in any center, any setup. So COVID-19, of course, we live in interesting times, and we live in probably times that we might never see again in our lifetime, and probably which is transform businesses completely. We never know because we still haven't got out of it. We don't know what's happened or what's going to happen in the future. But what definitely has happened is this uncertainty has laid a lot of importance at the door of business resilience, business reliability, repeatability, less dependence on physical locations, greater dependence on the process, on the systems, on the workflows, and ultimately automated delivery models. So if you just go back to what I was saying a few seconds back on integrated workflows and having a unified system, it is times like this where you actually see the impact of having invested in such a system. Because if you are able to have, so today I have my team of about 270 people who are scattered across 16 different cities in India and in the Middle East. And because of this COVID, we are all working from home. We have managed to we have not missed a single SLA over the last 3 months because we have managed to integrate our processes to that level so far. We still haven't got to the automation part of it. We've got to the process integration part of it. And we have these systems which enable us to work seamlessly without disruption, without dependence on a particular person or a particular process. The system takes care of itself. We've got to that. So having this is going to be the future. What we keep hearing about the new normal is all going to be about, I like to bracket all of this under trust, because whether it's reliability, repeatability, efficiency, whether it's pure availability, it's all kind of trust that you have to build, whether it's on the system, whether it's on the process, whether it's on people. And the move has also gone from people being in one location to collaborative working. I think that is the biggest change. If you see the impact that tools like Microsoft Teams has had on people working from home, it's primarily enabling collaboration. Of course, there is the reality that you can't replicate the office culture where you meet people, have your interactions, have your discussions, and ideate. But still, this is far better than what it would have been like had we been hit with this virus 10 years ago. It would have been very difficult for a lot of companies to transform or transition themselves into a work from home setup. So That's one of the benefits that we've had with automation over the last few years. So how is this actually going to affect us? Let me park a bit on this slide here, because transformation is it's a buzzword that's bandied about quite a lot. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. And when we are recovering from a crisis like this, how would you view transformation? How would you look at the future of your company? Of course, there are fundamental things like customer retention. There are stuff like capital adequacy. These are things that have to be managed, have to be addressed. Those are hygiene factors. But when you look at the long term, how do you transform yourself? One, to emerge from a crisis like this. Two, to face any such potential relapse of such a crisis, which is very possible within the next year, year and a half, 2 years, till we have a vaccine that's highly reliable. And three, how do you given that a lot of businesses have changed permanently, how do you adapt your company to the needs of the future? So where do we start? Are we going to talk just process improvement, workflows, integrated automation? What are we going to talk? Or are you going to talk a complete transformation of the business operating model, a business vision? The reality is it's both. Today, if you were having the same conversation about 2 years ago with somebody who's in the automation space, the key focus would have been process improvement, process transformation, making things better, making sure that you are in business. But today, it's become something far beyond that. How do you alleviate the burden on human beings to ensure their lives and livelihoods? I think that's a far bigger problem for the society and for companies to manage. So in reality, companies in the future, as things come out of this pandemic enforced lockdowns, companies will have to have a much more humane approach to business transformation. Despite all the job losses that we've been seeing, despite all the fear that people are going to lose their jobs, my gut feel is that with greater automation, it's actually going to open up a lot more opportunities for people. And I have a reason to say that. If you remember, I started with Amazon and the Amazon effect and customer experience. So today, now that we are in a work from home mode, how are we interacting with our systems, with our business systems, with our ERP, with our CRM? Are we able to get our job done easily? Are there multiple logins required? Are there multiple systems to be tracked? Do we have dashboards? Do we have data flowing into a screen that we can see? Do we have real-time data? Do we track metrics regularly? Are our SLAs well configured and mapped to actual business systems and data? And is it tracked regularly? I put all of this under one word: experience. And I keep coming back to that because today, experience is far more than just customer experience. And how every employee interacts with business systems, how every management executive interacts with the employees through the systems, without the systems, how a client, how a vendor, or somebody in the supply chain works with the principal client through a system. These all constitute the experience part of it, because over time, this experience becomes critical. And how do you ensure that this experience is good is critical and core to our strategy, and that's what is going to define how we transform. Let me give you a personal example. At Future Pipe Industries, while I set out to do the transformation, we work on, of course, as every other company does, we have a standalone ERP, a cloud-based CRM, we have our HRMS, we have all these systems. We have an SCM system, we have our ITSM system that tracks the IT services that we manage. So how are people interacting with these systems? So when somebody wants to get data or input data, they have to log into multiple systems, get their inputs from 3-4 different places, pull them together into an Excel sheet, share a dashboard. So this was the way things were happening. I have tried to build in a skin that's on top of this. So something like ServiceNow. So if you imagine something like a ServiceNow, what it does as a user experience medium, you have the ERP, CRM, everything connected to ServiceNow, and the interaction that you actually have is based with one system, which is ServiceNow, and that is the improvement in experience, which automatically drives your automation forward, it drives your efficiency forward, it drives your profitability forward, and ultimately your revenues forward. I think it is having this kind of an integrated vision that encompasses processes, systems, people, data, KPIs and metrics, and tracking them on a regular basis. That hygiene of monitoring needs to be brought in place, and ultimately that interaction experience needs to be created. How your business processes work, how your business processes interact with your workforce, with people that use them, and actually drive value. So as Churchill says, never let a good crisis go waste. This probably is not the right kind of a crisis to have, but it's thrown up a challenge, and this challenge probably can help you redefine the way you take your enterprise forward, your process forward. And I think it's up to us to look at it holistically, to define a much more broader plan as we go into the automation space. And if you can achieve this kind of well-defined intelligent automation system that focuses on experience for everybody, I think you're not going to have job losses. You're actually going to keep growing your business and add people. I think with those words, I think I'll stop here, and with a call for action. Thank you for the opportunity, I should say.
Jagan, thank you very much for an exciting and insightful presentation. We have a number of questions for you, and if you are intending to put a question through, please do so as soon as possible. Fascinating journey through automation and the associated ecosystem. Actually challenged a few things that I thought in that space, so I shall have to go and revisit a few things. So thank you for that, Jane. Right, let's start with our first question, if I may. And this one comes from Antonio, who says, given the constraints for a successful RPA application, how feasible is it to completely leapfrog RPA and move straight into AI? That's
AI by nature is needs not just volumes of data, it also needs to be trained. AI requires good data sets that can train it initially, because ultimately we still don't have self-learning systems. These systems have to be trained, and training these systems requires a large volume of data. RPA, as I just spoke about, intelligent automation ends in RPA. Now in AI, I'm sorry, AI is the ultimate goal. So ultimately, if you want to have a chatbot that talks to you, understands what you say, goes out, picks information for you, comes back without being trained to do it, that's AI. And having NLP, which can detect your emotions, which can detect what you need and answer, preempt you in many cases, that's going to be an integral part of how things move forward. The COVID crisis itself has opened up a Pandora's box of chatbots everywhere. So wherever you go, you see chatbots now, and I think it's a good thing, because a lot of companies that would never have embraced chatbots have now embraced chatbots, and it's going to be, many of them are AI driven, and this learning, this data that you keep getting is going to be very useful. Ultimately, it's about AI is a what do you call it? It's a subject. It's like physics. How do I embrace physics, or how do I embrace mathematics, or how do I embrace data analytics? It's about the tools that you use. I think the earliest or the closest that we'll see, closest adoption we will see is for chatbots, where you will see AI. In many cases, you can skip RPA, go straight into AI chatbots. It's already happening, and it'll only pick up pace now with the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Jagan. Antonio, I hope that answers your question, or at least provides you with a starting point to an answer to your question. And Jagan, if I may ask, a lot of conversations that I personally have around sort of RPA is and it seems to be a very, not necessarily a complaint, but let's say a discussion point. Companies have implemented RPA globally, and a lot of the conversation is often around, why is the tool not delivered on its promise? Do you have any insights as to why that might be?
Well, it's ultimately about what your motivation to get into RPA was. Let me actually give you an example. This is a large European telco, and I was working with their products team, and we were trying to find opportunities for RPA implementation within their processes. And as we were mapping the processes out during the discovery stage, the leader for that process comes up and says, "Hey, I today have 780 people working for me, and I want to cut that down to 230. So RPA needs to help me with that." Having this kind of a premise is a recipe for disaster. If he had told me that, hey, my goal is to improve metric X, metrics Y, metric Z by so much over this time frame, how can RPA help? I want to increase my revenue contribution per employee. I want to reduce cost of operations. I want to improve customer satisfaction, or whatever. I think that is a better determinant of RPA success. Many of the, even this is a mistake that's been done by a lot of these IT consulting firms. The ROI that they come up with is always based on job losses, and that almost never works. And most of the disillusionment around RPA stems from that right now, at least from my experience.
Jagan, thank you for that. That may offer a very good pause for thought for a lot of organizations when they are looking at RPA, specifically around that. I have another question from Rajesh, and Rajesh wants to know, do they need a well-structured BPM tool to start with RPA, or is it possible to work with multiple systems and integrate them into an RPA?
You need to have a good workflow. It doesn't matter how many systems you have. Your process needs to have a very well-defined, optimized workflow. You might start with SAP, move into Salesforce, come back into SAP, move to whatever system on the back end and come back to SAP, doesn't matter. As long as that workflow is highly optimized and probably the most efficient workflow that you can come up with, RPA can work. The number of systems RPA has to target is never going to limit the efficiency of the engine.
Okay, thank you for that. Rajesh, I hope that provides you with a steer in the right direction. Please let us know. Join the conversation online as we develop. Anna has both commentary and a question. Anna loved the presentation and asks, can RPA be applied to automate manual processes which integrate with an ERP system, such as keying data into the ERP system?
It can be. I spoke of purchase order processing. If you know of this organization called Kofax. So Kofax has a system where any incoming invoice can be scanned, and the system automatically reads out the various components that need to go into the ERP from a scanned invoice using OCR techniques, and it can auto input. It can recognize, say, invoice numbers, dates, location, address, client names, everything. The catch is the RPA system has to be trained. The OCR has to be trained, and the invoice needs to be in a specific format, in a specific structure, at least within limited variations. So yes, you can automate manual processes that require data entry. If you are looking at a physical piece of paper and putting data into ERP, it can be done through OCR, but with limitations. You will have to train the system first. You will have to come up with a system with a structured model of an invoice or a paper-based input that you come in with. If you have too much variance, it comes back to a person. RPA will just refer it back to a person, physical person, to get it done.
Fantastic, thank you, Jagan. Anna, I hope that provides you with some good feedback. We have a question from Andrea. Again, commentary. Andrea states, thanks a lot. From their perspective, they want to know it's important to incorporate automation to help avoid human error, and with the AI help prevent mistakes. The main thing is to standardize with processes to measure deviations from his perspective. How can they use it in health systems?
In health systems?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to replace the word standardized with optimized, because even if you have a process that's very standard, it might not be the most optimal. I would urge you to look at an optimal process which is efficient and gets things done quickly. Healthcare, banking, and insurance are probably the biggest adopters of automation after maybe logistics, because insurance and banking particularly, they given the volume of sensitive information that's handled and the volume of critical data that's transferred, they rely a lot on automation in the back end. Telcos are another bunch of a bunch of clients that use automation extensively. Healthcare definitely, because I have physically seen a company that's used scanned copies of your CT scan or MRI reports to diagnose early stage benign tumors, which don't even show up to a human eye. So yes, AI and the learning system, neuro learning systems are having a lot of impact in the healthcare space, right from basic data inputs right up to diagnosis and even surgical interventions.
Fantastic. And I think we've just got time for one final question, if I may, Jagan. And really, this is one kind of that you may not want to answer because there may not be such a beast. But if you were to pick one silver bullet that ensures a successful automation, what would that be?
Process mining, very simply put, because the more information you have on your data, on your workflow, on your process, on your workflows, on how your BPM works, on how your ERP, how your CRM works, you have a much, much better chance of succeeding in your automation journey. And I will urge every company to embrace process mining. It's a new thing. It requires some learning. And yes, look at Solaris, look at Signavio, look at Minet. There are a lot of companies that are coming up with fabulous systems. Process mining visually shows you how different your systems behave in different situations and times. And that is an insight which is extremely valuable when you're automating, and even once you've automated. That kind of gives you real-time information like nothing else.
Thank you. And David has just snuck under the wire with a final question. Sure. Any great example in local government where RPA has helped move the needle?
In local government, Singapore is probably the most advanced when it comes to embracing RPA in their e-government system. Singapore, and to a big extent Dubai. So I have seen how Dubai and even Singapore have used RPA as at the back end to process a lot of information, mostly to do with municipal metering, municipal collection of dues or traffic irregularities, and it's been pretty successful.
Fantastic. David, I hope that gives you a couple of pointers in where to look. Jagan, thank you so much for true insight into this area, which is a truly fascinating and important part of where we're moving as a global community in this space. So thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to catching up in due course. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this session, and I hope, like me, you found it insightful, enjoyable, and want to continue the conversation. As Jose outlined during the first session, please do continue the conversation online. You can find the opportunities for both Jose and Vijay, my colleague and CEO, where the conversation will continue going on. Now, please do rejoin us at the top of the hour, where I'm very excited to announce that Cameron Jahanshi will be joining us, giving a presentation around laying the foundation for advanced analytics in finance. Cameron is the former VP for Global Finance Strategy and Transformation at Walgreens, so as well as numerous other high-profile engagements. So don't miss that. You will not want to. So we'll see you back at the top of the hour, and enjoy the break and catch up soon.